Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and welcome back to another installment in my History of series. With us officially now in the aftermath of the Mishima Saga, the remnants of that bloodline continue to linger, living on through their children and their grandchildren. And while some choose to embrace their birthright, there are others that fight against it, to shine a bright light on a rather bleak world. So today, we will be talking about the leader of Yggdrasil and defiant captain against terror, Lars Alexxanderson. Now Lars is a very interesting addition to the Mishimas, adding an extra layer of mythos to Heihachi's character, while simultaneously showing that not everyone in that bloodline has to fall down a dark path of villainy. But why is that so? What has made Lars so different from your typical Mishima? Well, that is what we will be exploring in today's video. So with all of that said, before we do begin, if you like what we do here and wish to see more, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it does go a very long way here. And if you wish to stay up to date with everything we do here, feel free to subscribe and tick that bell to be notified when we upload a video. Anywho, let's just jump right into things. For us to really talk about Lars and understand his character, we must first dial the clock extremely far back, just so we can understand the nature of his birth and understand his relationship with the Mishimas. Now Lars is of Swedish descent, having been conceived and born somewhere prior to the events of the first Tekken. The reason why I bring this up is due to the nature of his birth. As whilst on the surface, he does look like a normal young man, he was in fact the illegitimate experimental child of Heihachi Mishima. The purpose behind his birth was for Heihachi to figure out if he had been inflicted with the devil gene, as he was married to Kazumi Hachijo, someone whom possessed it. Thus, it raised his suspicions if he had been inflicted with such a disease. In order to put this theory to the test, he would travel across the globe, siring 18 to 25 children, to learn if he did in fact have the devil gene. So Lars's birth was ultimately something very speculative in nature. So once he was born, absent of the devil gene, Heihachi immediately lost interest, simply chalking him up to be another child in his crusade. So for a long time, Lars was discarded and forgotten by Heihachi. Although the details are incredibly scarce, it is implied that through these actions, Lars was raised by his single mother, with no siblings heard of or mentioned. It's also worth pointing out that despite being of Swedish descent, we don't know if he was actually raised in Sweden, as he does speak Japanese in-game, something quite uncharacteristic for Tekken characters, as everyone does speak in their native tongue. So it's very possible he was raised in Japan. As time passed, Lars was able to decipher the truth of his father's identity, actually later even enrolling in Heihachi's personal military force, the Tekken Force. It's never explained if this was done to get closer to his father, to then reveal his identity, or if this was done to assassinate him. It's never elaborated on, but seeing as their first interaction doesn't go particularly well, it is very possible that Lars used this as a way to infiltrate the family company, the Mishima Zaibotsu. On Tekken's timeline, it looks like Lars' enrollment took place sometime around the Tekken 3 to 4 period, as he's earned the respect of his peers through his combat. But it's only until the end of Tekken 5 where Lars really kicks into action, as following the events of Tekken 4, Heihachi would mysteriously disappear, believed by many to be dead, as the Zaibotsu had been taken over by his father, Jinpachi Mishima, before it then fell into the hands of his grandson, Jin Kazama. Under his thumb, the Zaibotsu would take a very dark turn, as Jin became a warmonger that waged battles and multiple skirmishes across the globe, having innocents be caught in the crossfire and simply waved off as collateral. Lars would take a firm stand against his tyranny, spearheading a rebellion known as Yggdrasil through an unknown benefactor. Lars was able to defect 30,000 or so soldiers as he battled against both G Corporation and the Mishima Zaibatsu, now taking us into the scenario campaign of Tekken 6. Now during the opening segment, we are introduced to Lars infiltrating one of the Zaibatsu's many facilities. Here, he is attacked when acquiring a cyborg known as Elisa Boskonovich, being caught in a massive explosion that occurs at the facility. Whilst physically he was okay, mentally he was far from that, as the explosion had caused him to suffer from amnesia. Seeking both guidance and answers, Lars would partner with the naive Elisa and travel the globe to get the answers they so desperately desired. Inevitably, this did have him cross paths with an old friend, Tongu, lieutenant in Yggdrasil, who does reveal to Lars the truth of his identity. Naturally, a responsibility that he cannot take on. Fully understanding the situation, Tongu would take command of leadership, hoping that by the end of this, Lars could recover his memory. But just before they do part ways, Lars is advised to hunt down Heihachi Mishima, being told that he may hold his answers. With some spiritual guidance from Wang, he is able to learn of Heihachi's location, yet is warned to be wary of Elisa, as beneath that kind and gentle exterior was something dangerous created by the Zaibatsu, something that Lars ultimately ignores. So eventually, he is able to come face to face with Heihachi, and by gazing upon him, memories would flood back, recognizing that the man before him was his father. Feeling only anger and disgust, Lars would fire on Heihachi, with the old man still nimble enough to catch the bullet between his teeth. With his memories restored, the two simply part ways, as Heihachi does not have what he needs. After battling more of the Zaibatsu, Lars is finally able to come into contact with Yggdrasil's financial benefactor, Li Chaolong, owner of Violet Systems. Disgusted at both his nephew and his brother's actions, he funded Yggdrasil in the hopes of ending this war, and so does offer his hand in companionship for Lars to take. But not wishing him to be directly dragged into it, he does respectfully decline, still wishing to help him where he could. And this takes him to G Corporation, as Lars is given the mission of saving Li's informant, Julia Chang. So during this siege, Julia is saved, but this fight does come at a cost, as a shootout would take place, resulting in the death of Tongu. Too far gone to turn back, Lars would continue in his pursuit to crumble the Zaibatsu. But this was no easy task, as they would be ambushed by the cybernetic monstrosity, Nancy, actually forcing Raiden to intervene and save them, which then led to a very formidable fight with the assassin Nina Williams. After defeating her, he is able to fight Jin, with the battle ending in a stalemate. Yet before a true victor could be determined, Jin is able to turn Elisa against him, showing that she is in fact been his eyes and ears. Under his thumb, Elisa is forced against her will to comply with his orders, attacking her former ally with the intent to kill. But at this point for Lars, their camaraderie has clearly blossomed into something else. So he can't quite force himself to attack, yet knows that he must to survive. So Lars is able to defeat Elisa, but is unable to recover her body, leaving Lars both distressed and lost. It's only by meeting Raven where he gains his resolve, and his course is corrected towards Egypt. Learning that both Jin and Kazuya were present, he would immediately set out to defeat them both, battling Kazuya to a stalemate, before then, unexpectedly, encountering the progenitor of the devil gene, Azazel, a draconic being awoken by the chaos amassed in the war. With a lust to conquer the world of man, Lars was all that stood between that destruction. So by using his formidable Mishima genes, Lars is actually able to defeat Azazel, putting him down and allowing him to proceed to Jin. In the final confrontation, he is once again forced to defeat Alyssa, but now finally defeats Jin Kazama. And it's here where the veil finally lifts. As whilst Jin had performed heinous acts, we do learn that this was all done in order to draw out Azazel, as it would allow him to get rid of some of the world's tyrants, before then destroying the devil gene. So once Azazel resurfaced, Jin would strike him down, believing that he gave his life in order to end that line. Yet, this would all be in vain, as the devil gene continued to thrive. In the aftermath of these events, Lars would recover Alyssa and finally take her to Violet Systems, where she was purged of Jin's control. Yet, this would take quite a bit of time, so Lars would band with Lee, seeking to recover Jin, as it would give them a chance to defeat both Heihachi and Kazuya. Now taking us into Tekken 7. Now coming into Tekken 7, Lars plays more of a support role than anything else, as following Jin's fall from grace, he would actively pursue and track him down, as he was persecuted by the UN and found in the sands of the Middle East. Here, Lars is able to rescue him, taking him back to Violet Industries. It's also during this time where Lars is finally reunited with Alyssa, finally restored back to her normal self. But of course, the peace would not last, as word of Jin's survival and escape would reach the ears of Heihachi. Once again in control of the Zaibotsu, he would assign Nina Williams the mission of capturing Jin, infiltrating Violet Industries with her own Tekken force. This, however, was a surprise attack they had expected. So upon recovering Jin, Yggdrasil would escape, and Nina is left empty-handed. In the climax of 7's story, he does bear witness to the final clash between Kazuya and Heihachi, only ending once his father had fallen. With his brother victorious, a new and very dark age came in for the world. But with Jin by their side, Lars firmly believed that they now stood a chance. So this brings us up to our current installment, Tekken 8. And during this game, Lars plays a far more up and front role as he wages a war against Kazuya, trying his best to stop G-Corp. Sadly, this does all end up being very unsuccessful, as Kazuya's grip is far too tight, and Jin loses in their first battle. It's through a spar shared between the two, where they realize that something isn't quite right with Jin. He lacks force and strength behind his fist, like his heart isn't quite in it. And it's through Lee, where we learn he is locked out from using the Devil Gene. Running out of options, Lars decides to band with the UN's Raven Division, led by Victor. The two form an alliance in the middle of Kazuya's Iron Fist tournament. But as they carefully prepare their next strike, it is Kazuya who makes the first step, freeing Azazel from his shackles and imbuing himself with its incredible power, allowing him to ascend to a completely new and much stronger devil form, one so powerful that not even Lars and a handful of fighters are able to put a scratch on him. It takes the interference of Reina and sacrifice of Claudio in order to force him to retreat. With Kazuya finally on the back foot, Lars takes the initiative to assemble all of his allies and forces as they have one final stand against G Corporation. Together, they storm the battlefield, crumbling Kazuya's army, so much so that Kazuya is forced to send in Jack 8 and even intervene himself to wipe out the battlefield, taking out friend and foe. Eventually, this allows him to learn the location of Jin, as he is currently unconscious. Realizing what his brother was up to, Lars would set off immediately in pursuit of him. So they would finally have their rematch, and Lars is greatly outmatched, simply unable to stop someone that strong and that skilled. Yet, again and again, despite being on the back foot, he would stand up against his brother in defiance, headbutting him and showing that whilst Heihachi was gone, his fighting spirit did live on. The two would trade more blows until Lars's body begins to fail on him, Sensing his end was near, Kazuya looked to turn him to ashes, only being saved by Jin at the very last second. Having conquered the Devil Gene, Jin is able to take over and allow Lars to rest as he fights his father, eventually leading to Kazuya's defeat. Sadly, following this, we don't have a true aftermath of the events of Tekken 8, as it's only the photos we see at the end that give us a rough idea of what became of our heroes. For Lars, he can be seen returning back to the Yggdrasil base, where he is accompanied by Lee and Alyssa, presumably ready to bring in a new age of peace. With that said, Lars at the current time is completely unaware of Reina being his half-sister, so the age of the Mishimas is not truly over. And with her being the current remnant of the Devil Gene, it will be very interesting to see just how this family dynamic is tackled moving forward. But for now everyone, that has been it for the history of Lars. So, with that said, and us now in the aftermath of Tekken 8, what direction could you see this character going? Do you think he will fall into the ways of his family's dynasty? Or do you believe he will keep moving forward as a symbol of justice and good for the franchise? And what do you think his interaction with Reina is going to be like? Please do comments down below. But for now everyone, stay strong, stay well, and keep on fighting. I'll catch you all in the next one.